What was the dumbest rule your school enforced? In my freshman year of high school we had a terrible vandalism problem. The bathrooms would be broken in various ways almost constantly. In a stroke of pure genius, the staff decided that any bathroom that was vandalized would be closed for the week on first offense, the quarter for second, and permanently on the third offense. They took back the rule after closing every bathroom on day 1. Holy sh! Recently at my high school someone stole a refine urinal. I have no clue how someone manages to do that. That takes some Ocean's 11 level planning right there. School added thumbprint scanners at gates of school which counted as registration. Needless to say I would just walk to school, scan my thumb and walk back home with them none the wiser. Was a great few months until they noticed. Took all the doors off the men's room bathroom stalls because of vandalism for 2 months. Same at my school, but for all 4 years, we had no TP or mirrors either. No TP? What did you use then? Effectively turned every public bathroom into a private bathroom, I guess. Either a private bathroom or a very public bathroom, depending on how desperate other people are. Locked bathroom doors in the period after lunch. You should have gone at lunch. Also banned duct tape accessories back when that was a trend. They said it was gang activity. No backpacks to class, but purses were allowed. Girls started carrying around purses big enough to be considered a backpack. Guys got pissed, started carrying purses too. Prom was a mandatory lockdown for the night in order to avoid students going to parties after prom. Prom was held at various house parties across town instead. I hated when schools shove their noses into everyone else's business. We had overnight dry grad. It wasn't a dance but more like a game night. There were bounce houses, obstacle courses and other games and stuff plus food, obviously. By about 4 to 5 AM I was pretty tired and actually asked if I could go home. No go. They wouldn't let anyone out unless their parent came and got them or it was an emergency. It was stupid as hell since we were 17/18 and had driven ourselves to the school and all it did was make us drive home overtired at 7 AM. I'm surprised everyone made it home alright since we were basically sleeping against walls and each other by that point. We weren't allowed to play tag football at lunch, only frisbee. When I asked the principal what the difference was, he responded with a sarcastic tone, "A football is round and a frisbee is a flat disc." He left the school later that year, went to another school, and a few years later was brought up on charges for failing to report the abuse of a student by a teacher. In 6th grade they switched out all student chairs for large rubber stability balls. There was a strict no bouncing rule. It was a disaster. This wouldn't work with any age group, let alone 6th graders. Actually, we have those in one classroom in HS, only because the teacher who has classes there is a bit nuts. At first everyone was bouncing on them but we got bored of it after some time. These bouncy balls are supposedly good for your back and I love them. But it would be an absolute nightmare in primary school. How does anyone that works with children think that was a good idea? Hell, I don't think that would work with adults. My school banned backpacks at one point. To protest, boys just didn't bring anything with them to class and girl brought really big purses. One of the funnier things that happened because of it was an interaction between my friend and a teacher. Teacher, where's your book? Friend, in my backpack. Teacher, and where is that? Friend, at home. You couldn't wear any kind of head items that were gang colors, red or blue. This included hairbands, scrunchies, beads in your hair, ribbons, anything. I got in trouble for wearing a blue hairband with white polka dots. Don't joke about the polka dot cartel. My high school mascot was Daniel Boone holding a musket. A kid wore a Guns N' Roses shirt to school and was told he had to change shirts because of the pistols on the shirt. He pointed out the hypocrisy of the school mascot and they changed everything. The mascot was switched to holding a flagpole instead. Every instance of the mascot was changed from the multiple signs outside and around the school to the giant picture in the middle of our basketball stadium. Holden, you're a refine legend for this. Hey, at least this shows a consistent internal logic and lack of hypocrisy on the part of school admin, although definitely a lack of self-awareness too. I mean, at least they fixed their hypocrisy when it was pointed out to them. We had to wear belts, Someone snitched that people weren't wearing belts under their sweaters, and they actually checked and a bunch of people got detentions. Stupid. We had belt raids at my school where the dean would burst into classes, completely interrupting any education, to check that everyone was wearing a belt. We gotta understand him though. How could you possibly learn anything without a belt on to retain the information? No jackets. They think we may hide things like phones or bombs there. Can't wear too many matching shirts because you could be a gang. This was in regards to a kid with cancer wanting to make a bunch of shirts. My high school was in Butt F, Nebraska. American schools seem to be obsessed with the idea of gangs. They really are. My public school in the 90s tried to make us wear private school style uniforms. Avoiding gang colors was big argument for this. This was an affluent school in the suburbs. Schools will latch onto any perceived potential transgression to enforce authoritarian rules, which is how you end up with teen girls carrying ibuprofen for period cramps being treated like heroin traffickers. All the kids, 6th or 7th grade, started putting pink laces in their shoes. Don't know why, but the school officials banned colored laces saying pink is a gang color. Circa 1994 to 1997, no hugging, like at all. First offense was a write-up. Second was detention. Third was in-school suspension. They decided everything bad happened in the last 5 minutes of lunch, so it got 5 minutes shorter each year. Any group more than 5 had to be up to no good, so no groups over 5. This is just 2 groups of 3. School banned them. It's clearly a gang war now. Involved in a fight. Same punishment regardless of fault, and this led to more dangerous fights due to everyone just going for it. Saw people use chairs, cricket bats and anything just to hand. Getting expelled from the school was really hard as it was the last chance school in the area, and after that it was the special reform school. You got in trouble if you wore just a Hanes white t-shirt after school because you were in your underwear. Might as well just wear your literal underwear to make a statement, or just strip entirely. We can't use black pens. Like why? My high school banned t-shirts that had the cover of Rush's album Signals, an album popular at the time, which features an image of a dog sniffing a fire hydrant. They considered it scatological because the dog was about to pee on it. This struck the entire student body as extremely stupid, and roughly 1/2 of the student body picked a day to wear the t-shirt. We won. Imagine how terrible it would be if kids found out that dogs pee. Shoes are to be worn as the manufacturer intended. I have no clue who was wearing their shoes incorrectly, or how, but this line, verbatim, was repeated to us over the morning announcements when there were perceived infractions at various points throughout the year. Maybe people were drawing on their shoes? If you were involved in a fight, you got suspended. While it sounds reasonable, context didn't matter. I got suspended once, not for throwing a single punch, kick, whatever. I got suspended because someone knocked the books out of my hand, and when I reached down to grab them they punched me in the face. I got suspended for walking down the hallway and unprovoked getting punched in the face. Brandon Valley Middle School. My buddy got suspended for something similar. His Marine Corps MP mother told him in no uncertain terms that if anyone tried that shit again, earn that suspension. Effing surprise surprise. The dude tried that again and he went ham on that kid. Busted nose, torn ear, black and blue for weeks. The fallout was exactly the same as not fighting back at all, except my buddy got a pat on the back from his mom and a new video game. Tell you what, no one tried that with him again. If it wasn't zero tolerance then it wouldn't be a problem. Someone gives you some physical trouble and they get punished. Easy peasy. They've got cameras everywhere. Surely it would be pretty easy to see. Isn't it ironic that zero tolerance policies actually encourage violence? They banned the word snap, since everyone used it instead of sh, so we all just started saying sh. The snap ban lasted about 3 days. Ash, my pencil snapped, I mean shat. Oh snap. Get em, they said snap. We were all given these ugly planners at the beginning of the school year, with a few pages at the back filled with hall passes. If you didn't have your planner, or if all your boxes were filled, you weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. And no, you couldn't buy a new planner, or borrow one from your friend. The only excuse you had was if you had a doctor's note, but no doctor is going to give a note for an upset stomach caused by the school lunch. Oh wow, I totally forgot about this until you said this. We had those too. Some teachers gave extra credit to kids who never used any of their hall passes. I went to a school that had block scheduling, so our classes were 2 hours long, pretty messed up that we were incentivized to never use the bathroom. Now that I think back on that, God, my middle school did too. You had a page of hall passes and I think you had like 6 for a quarter. You could use them to go to your bathroom or your locker if you forgot your homework or something. If you didn't use them you got extra credit. I think I used one once the whole time I was in middle school because I had forgotten my homework in my locker. I later developed Crohn's disease around age 17 and I am terrified to think what that would have been like in middle school pre-diagnosis and thus pre-doctor's note. The $200 blazer was compulsory and we got detention every single day until we got it. They banned wristwatches. No one knows what the reason was. That's when you go full Flavor Flav and wear a timepiece around your neck instead. It's a gateway clock. Before you know it people will start bringing pocket watches, then wall clocks, then grandfather clocks, and before you know it some kid walks in with Big Ben. Then what do? My brother is addicted to Big Bens. Man, last year he spent all his money on gear wheels and batteries. Our school banned hugging because it was erotic. As you can imagine, the boys at school started giving each other very sensual high fives for the rest of the year. I picture them moaning loudly while their hands were slowly gliding against the other for several seconds. Talk about homosexuality. There's no group that takes homoeroticism more seriously than late middle high school boys. Yes, there is. The military. A girl and a boy couldn't sit together. The school employed disciplinarians to roam around the school and monitor this activity. If found, you will get a reprimand. If found repeating the offense, you get sent to the principal office, and if continuing, then eventually escalated to the parents etc. Lol. My parents would have just laughed if my school called to tell them I sat next to a girl. That was the ridiculousness of the whole thing. The parents didn't give a hoot, except for a handful who thought it was a great idea, but kids hung out after school hours, outside and on weekends. They dated whoever they wanted and pretended they were in a forbidden relationship while at school. It was like trying to catch water through a sieve. Middle school had banned salt and pepper from being used in the cafeteria, claimed it was too unhealthy, still sold Mountain Dew in the vending machines. School I used to teach at had similar rules. Some bullshit about federal nutrition standards or something. We'd just keep them in the teacher's lounge along with hot sauces and chamoy and a few other condiments and leave them on our desks. As a student, I brought my own hot sauce to school, right next to my pot. Our school banned water bottles. For some reason an extreme health water drinking fad started among our girls and they began bringing larger and larger water bottles to school. Eventually the girls were all walking around with giant 5L jugs of water all over the school. It did kinda look ridiculous and my school was posh and image conscious with very elegant uniforms. So then one day the principal banned all water bottles and said that the girls must drink water from the taps in the bathrooms and the other faucets all over the school grounds. Our city has very clean tap water so it is safe. That's kinda reasonable if you squint and turn it upside down, but TF did people in your school not drink water or something? Our school banned water bottles, but it was because some girl brought in a water bottle full of vodka and got drunk in class. No fist bumps. The reason for this is that kids might accidentally punch the other person in the face. No touching the walls. They restored a building with historic value using, among other things, period appropriate paints. They then opened a planned primary school there and proceeded to try to get children to respect the restoration work. So we had a few years of benches in the hallways being 10 centimeters from the wall and children being reprimanded for leaning against the wall before the faculty gave up. No jackets with hoodies. In grade 8, we were banned from standing in circles at recess because of potential scandalous activity going on in the middle. We stood in squares instead. For a while in my school groups of kids would stand in circles shouting fight, 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 until a teacher came to break up the non-existent fight. God, we were a-holes. I wish my students would do imaginative and actually kinda funny stuff like this, rather than the incomprehensibly childish and boring regular kid stuff that's as tedious to solve as it's embarrassing to all involved. Be there and be square. Look at this guy, coming at the problem from a different angle. We couldn't wear winter clothing, jackets, hats, gloves, in class because they were gang symbols. This was a small farm town in Wisconsin. Besides obviously having no gangs, it was effing cold, even indoors, in the winter, but clearly wearing warm clothing is something only gangs do. Also small town Wisconsin. We weren't able to wear jackets or anything like that in class either for literally the same reason. One kid came into class wearing snow boots and the teacher told him to put them back in his locker. So he came back with his farm boots that smelled like straight manure. You knew where he was for the rest of the day. Why was this such a Wisconsin thing? I still remember in middle school, when we laughed about how there were no gangs in school, the teachers said in high school there will be a lot of gangs. I believed them and was legit scared. Mitten clan ain't nothing to F with. Glove gang. Attended all girls high school. You had to bring a male date to dances or not attend at all. No going solo or with your girlfriends. So backwards. Those sound like very empty dances. Sounds like a plot to get no one to show up so the school can just cancel dances entirely and not spend the money. Suspension as a punishment for skipping school. Don't want to come to school? Well, now you can't. Until next week. Grade 12, I got suspended 3 days out of school for skipping school. Parents didn't even have to call and for me. It was great. No brand name anything in the lunchroom. So you couldn't bring a small snack pack of, say, Doritos. In your lunch it had to be in a clear plastic sandwich bag. Also no food or beverage allowed in class. This included bottled water. As an adult I now know the terrible headaches and migraines I suffered in my teen years were caused by dehydration and not being allowed to drink water during the day unless from the nasty water fountain. They banned hats because hats can be used to signify gang colors. The only major crime group in our area was the Hells Angels and they certainly weren't having people wear hats for children to signify their allegiance. It was so bad a few years after I graduated I came back to volunteer as a chaperone for a school trip as a favor for my favorite teacher. The principal saw me wearing a beanie from across school. He literally sprinted half a mile to chase me down and tell me to take off the hat. When I told him I wasn't a student and didn't have follow the dress code, he said either take off the hat, leave, or he'd call the cops. It wasn't the actual day of the trip, just had to show up to get the itinerary and stuff, so I just said, F you, I'm out, idiots. Oblivion guards be like. They banned grey cows because they can be used to signify guild colors. The only major crime group in our area was the Dark Brotherhood and they certainly weren't having people wear hats for children to signify their allegiance. It was so bad a few years after I became the hero of Vatch I came back to volunteer as a mercenary for a quest as a favor for my favorite Argonian. The captain of the guard saw me wearing a cowl from across city. He literally sprinted half a mile to chase me down and tell me to take off the hat. When I told him I wasn't a citizen and didn't have follow the dress code, he said either take off the hat, leave, or he'd call the city guard. It wasn't the actual day of the quest, just had to show up to get the itinerary and stuff, so I just said, F you, I'm out. Noir. No playing on the mini golf course. Due to the school having mineral rights on oil land in the mid-70s, our school system had huge amounts of money. One thing they did was get 9 concrete animals on the playground for miniature golf. These looked like a lot of fun to play on for kids, and they were concrete so they were indestructible. They took up 1/3 of the absolute center of the playground. We could not touch them, play on them, or get anywhere near them. In pay we broke out the putters once in all of grade school. A few years later they had the high school seniors take them out with sledgehammers. All classes had to administer English spelling tests. In high school, I should not. So we'd be out in the yard for pay and have to take a written spelling test on the effing pavement. It was a damned nightmare. School administration would poke around to enforce it, too. It was all a part of an effort to get our standardized testing scores up. It backfired miserably, but they kept trying. The teachers absolutely hated it, and surprisingly, our administration was so F-ed. I did a research paper in college about how terrible standardized testing is for schools. Teachers have to focus on preparing their students for the test rather than teach them the actual subject. The worst part is that standardized test scores determine funding for public schools. The lower the scores, the less money the school receives. The less money the school receives, the harder it is to effectively teach the students, which leads to lower test scores. It's a horrible downward spiral that is so effing backwards. These kids are struggling and need more help. What should we do? Oh, I know. Let's cut funding to their school so they can't hire more teachers or education assistants or special ed workers. That should fix the problem. My high school had half the bathrooms closed off at all times because they feared the students would smoke. Some kids at my high school overdosed on drugs at school, so they put guards in front of the bathrooms and only let one person in at a time. This was a school with 1,200 students and exactly 2 available bathrooms per gender. What ended up happening was students would wait in line for an hour and miss more than half of a class period, 90-minute classes, and surprisingly, that rule didn't last long. They would just smoke in the available stalls then, or somewhere else, lol. No backpacks in the halls. Oh yeah, because carrying all of our books between classes was a great effing idea. Plus hardly any time between classes to exchange books meant carrying multiple classes things at once. My school was the same. No backpacks. Period. I heard it was enforced because bombs could be hidden there, but Jesus, for real? A type of candy because people would pretend to smoke it. Don't know if it's dumb or funny though. I'm a cheerleader, and for school spirit week I wore the uniform they gave me. I got dress coded. That is the ultimate high school moment. Ultimate life moment tbh. Lol, this is like when a teacher yelled at me for my skirt being too short while I was on my way to the bathroom to change into my even shorter tennis uniform skirt for our match. Our senior high school uniforms for girls had skirts that were quite short. If on non-uniform days you wore one of the same length, you get sent to the office. Reminds me of the time my school changed the sports uniform to an even shorter pair of shorts because the old ones were too short. We specifically weren't allowed to wear our tennis uniform at school for this reason. We could wear it but had to wear the sweatsuit over it. My school didn't have AC and it gets pretty hot in the spring summer. That sounds about right. It's hypocrisy any way you slice it. But that just sums up high school administration, doesn't it? Zero tolerance policy. Most zero tolerance policies for anything in a school don't work because the teachers that enforce the hell out of them don't understand the situation. Then when you try to explain, you get interrupted before you say your first syllable. We weren't allowed to have cough drops in our elementary because the school considered them drugs. God help you if you had a headache. Oh, you need an aspirin? Well, you need to eat more fiber, because that's tough. This is still a thing. My daughter is lactose intolerant and she's not allowed to take Lactaid with lunch because it's a drug. This was a rule at my high school. It was ridiculous. I almost got into trouble because I didn't know the rule and asked to go take something for a headache. Thankfully, I didn't actually say anything too specific about having anything myself, so I lied my off swearing that I didn't have any when the teacher confronted me about the rule. Of course. Then I went to the washroom and took some anyway, and hid it. If I'd been searched, I'm sure it would have been found. I thought I was being so smart at the time, but definitely they knew exactly what I did. But fortunately they weren't too interested in busting me for Tylenol. I made sure to always ask to be excused for other reasons if I needed to take some in future. They banned dodgeball. Oh yeah, me too. They banned soccer once. No beards. School me. Couldn't even if I tried. Couldn't play tag outside. No wearing hats inside. No trading stuff from your lunch. This was all at my elementary. No hats. Period. Unless you were devoutly Jewish or Muslim or some other religion that required it. No torn pants, shirts or other articles of clothing. Not enforced at all. They still have it today. No long jackets for boys. It was just fine for girls. What if your family just doesn't have money for new uniforms? Are you gonna get in trouble because your mom decided to feed your family instead of buying school clothes? My freshman dorm at a religious college had a list of rules that filled a legal-sized sheet of paper. It included being in your room for forced study time every night, keeping your towels straight on the towel rack, and making your bed by 9 AM every day, including weekends. So if you wanted to sleep in on Saturday morning, you were supposed to get up, make your bed, and then go back to sleep on top of the bed. Ah yes, the freedom of adulthood.